Enjoyed it. Elam McKnight, who is the president of our West Tennessee Blues Society and a musician and taught the slide guitar class, is also going to MC our symposium today. Really thankful for all he's done to help make this happen today. There are others who are wandering around out in the school I saw a while ago, so they're going to be wandering in here as we get started. Also want to say a big thank you to all the Blues Society members who this week we kind of had a run on radio stations and TV programs and stuff that we were invited to help get the word out about what was going on today. So the Blues Society members really stepped up to the plate and helped make some of those appearances, and I was very thankful for them. I want to thank all of y'all for being here and being a part of this today. This is the second annual Sleepy John's Country Blues Jam, and this year we're celebrating what would have been his 116th birthday. And if you haven't had a chance to go outside, because the sun's out today and it's beautiful, we have his last home on our grounds, and so you're welcome to go out there and look through that. And that was the last home that he lived in. And right now, we're really excited about getting started with our symposium and our panelists that we have. And thank y'all for being here. We certainly appreciate it. Also want to thank Andy Cooper. He's a Blues Society member, but a sound guy, and we couldn't do it without him. He's never in the limelight, but he's always working. So thank you, Andy. So Elam, I'm going to hand it over to you and let you introduce our panelists.
All right. I'd like to welcome everyone here to the second annual Sleepy John Estes Country Jam and now Symposium. This is our first year to have the Symposium, and we're very glad that everybody came out today. They're here, and we're going to talk today about I'm not going to talk, I'm going to ask questions, and these two gentlemen are going to talk about the influence of the West Tennessee Blues, or the West Tennessee Country Blues. And our first panelist is Michael Baker from Jackson, Tennessee. He has a lifelong interest in the music and the music history that has made him an expert on the life and music of Sonny Boy Williamson. And after finding his grave, was instrumental in marking it with a headstone and establishing a historical marker at the site. He served as the talent coordinator for the Shannon Street Blues Festival for over 21 years. And I've known Michael for almost 10 years, I think. And he is a very knowledgeable person about the subject that we're going to be talking about today, I can promise you. And to his right, your immediate left, or center stage, however you want to look at that, is Dr. David Evans. And he's a professor was a professor at the University of Memphis School of Music. Also an author. Has produced over 30 albums and numerous books on blues history. Specifically some on West Tennessee blues. He travels the world. You were in Italy one of the last times I talked to you. You've been to Italy?
Might have been.
Italy, and been all over Europe. Traveled the world performing as a solo act. So not only is he an author and a noted expert on the blues, he performs it as well. And with the Last Chance Jug Band, and I've seen him several times solo acoustic, which he may do a little bit for us today. And he is also a Grammy winner. So we are very honored to have both these gentlemen here. And to talk about a thing that has become our passion, which is West Tennessee blues. And I'm going to kick it off with a question to both of them is, where do you think it all started that you can recollect? What you would term West Tennessee blues. Yes, sir. Not the whole. We're not going that philosophical. Just West Tennessee blues.
Started with a drum.
Well, oh boy. Where and when?
Just what best that you do.
Probably same time and under the same circumstances pretty much that it did anywhere else in the South, the rural and small town South, but also people moving, African Americans moving into the cities at that time. There was increasing urban migration. Well, I mean, there had been since emancipation, but it was really picking up quite a bit around the beginning of the 20th century. And I think, the displacement of people at that time, there were financial panics, and the land was getting eroded in many parts of the South. And so a lot of folks were moving around, becoming sharecroppers, or going from one plantation to another if they stayed in the rural economy, and then others going into the cities. So it was, I think, it was music of displaced people, you might say.
Yeah, I mean, what was it? Was it Handy? Was it 1909 that he was down in Mississippi and saw a strange type of music being played?
Yeah, earlier.
Yeah. So I mean, that music, it's an African music. So Mississippi, of course, had a lot of the cotton plantations down there. So there was a lot of that going on, and a lot of cross pollination with some of the white music. Also put it in more of a standard musical form. So I mean, where and when, that's just, you're just not ever really going to know that. But I mean, as far as the recorded stuff, was it Hambone Willie Newbern that I mean, he was from Brownsville. He recorded what, in the 20s?
I think 1929.
So,
I think
it was
1929.
it was fairly early on, and there's I know there's all this thing that it started in Mississippi or it started here. I think, like Dr. Evans said, that
29.
It probably started a little bit everywhere, and people were moving around from working from one place to another, and it just sort of cross-pollinated and just became a folk movement.
So when someone claims the home of the blues, is that a misnomer?
Well, I mean, if you have blues living there, I guess it's his home.
Correct.
But Memphis has chiefly used that title. It actually started out as the slogan on the stationery letterhead of Handy Brothers Publishing Company. They just called that Home of the Blues, and the term just sort of drifted to Memphis, since that's where they were based.
And that wasn't a country blues that they were. I mean, there was a lot.
No, it was just
That
the
was
blues.
the blues.
And Handy pretty much tried to identify himself
Yeah.
with the blues, and of course came to be known as the father of the blues.
And then when they call him the father of the blues, and it seemed like in some of my readings that he was playing the orchestrated music that he was playing at the parties, and they asked a group of locals to come up, and Handy seemed like his guys kind of threw a little shine on the country guys, and they came up and in essence played something that would be what we would call the blues.
Handy doesn't specifically say it was blues, but he calls it a over and over strain, and that repetitious quality probably
Which was
indicated
different.
it was something close to blues. It was not something that his trained orchestra played yet. They
Right. So we would be more like what Fred McDowell refers to as a reel, maybe.
Could be, yeah.
So like the people, the folk
Andy
music.
called them snatches of song. It's just what he considered to be a very simple melody, a very simple musical idea, repeated a lot, and that blues often has that quality.
Yeah.
But he said, yet it had the essence. It made people dance and made them give money in tips to the musicians. So, and if you're a musician, that's important. It means something. Or a composer, something.
Yep.
And in either of your researching and studying, I know we go back to the Gus Cannon, which I saw you had some things with Gus Cannon.
Yeah.
Is there any earlier artists that we know of that we could call West Tennessee artists in the blues realm?
Well, Noah Lewis, great harmonica player from Henning, and Ashley Thompson. They played in Gus Cannon's band. That's why I brought this, not for Gus Cannon, but for Ashley Thompson, great singer and guitarist from Ripley, and he was interviewed too. He lived into the '60s, and he could read music, but he also played low-down blues. And Noah Lewis was a wonderful and very influential harmonica player. Hammy Nixon learned under him and was inspired by him. And then Sonny Boy Williamson was inspired by Hammy, maybe also by Noah Lewis, because he lived into the 60s. Yeah, I mean, you had a whole lot going on here.
And since we're here in honor of Sleepy John Estes, could you tell me a bit about either one of you, about your reflections on Sleepy John's music for this area?
Well, Sleepy John, I mean, was lucky that he was recorded in the 20s and 30s, I think, with Yank, and then he was lucky enough to be rediscovered in the 60s. So I mean, that really put his mark on this area. Plus, his music was very interesting because it was a lot of it was so autobiographical. I mean, a lot of it was just snatches of what his life was like. So yeah, and Yank and Sleepy John were really training grounds for other musicians too, like Sonny Boy. So I mean, they were very important.
Are there not recollections of Sonny Boy getting some means of transportation here or this area so he could study under them?
Well, from what I understand, is there was like a circuit that a lot of these people played, and I know from what I've read, Yank Rachel ran into Sonny Boy in South Madison County, and started traveling with Yank and Sleepy John. So I don't really know what the transportation thing was. I'm pretty sure that Sonny Boy didn't drive much.
Right.
I mean,
Well, you could ride a bicycle.
yeah, he did
you
ride a
could-
I
bike.
think I've heard that, is
if
that
you
he rode a
didn't-
bicycle.
Yeah,
Yeah, I know Tommy Johnson used to do that from Crystal Springs to
Yeah.
Jackson. They started building highways,
Right.
in the
yeah,
30s or even some in the 20s. And a lot of the Brownsville musicians would play out from Haywood
Yeah.
County because Brownsville was dry. And so, you couldn't have parties and
Yeah.
with alcohol here. Well, you could, but
Yeah.
you have to worry about that. And so there's bootlegging and so on. But really, it was there was more activity for a musician out of the county.
yeah.
So they find a way to get out. They might
Yeah.
spend a weekend there, might have relatives, cousins, and things like that.
Well, Sonny Boy, I know he rode a bike. I know that TW, his brother, told me that.
Mm-hmm.
And they would go up to Bemis and they'd play for nickels and stuff out in front of the movie theater there, and so they'd go in and watch the movies. And I know he played a lot of the Madison County, like fish fries and just parties like that. So, they found a way,
Yeah, on weekends.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know for those who are listening, when they say Sonny Boy, they're talking about John Lee Sonny
John
Boy
Lee
Williamson
Williamson, yeah.
from Jackson. And there's a little confusion when you talk about blues culture and history. There was another Sonny Boy Williamson who people get a lot of times confused with, who was actually named Alec Rice Miller,
Rice Miller.
who actually he stole his name after he died, or he took his name, and
Yeah, a lot of people were traveling around
Right.
using other people's names at the time. So, I think even Yank and Sleepy John pretended to be, Muddy Waters and Little Walter at one time. So, it wasn't like that people had album covers. And,
Right.
This is it. So, you go in.
whatever make a dime.
Yeah, it makes some money, And from now, this is what T.W. Utley, who was John Lee's brother, said that Sonny Boy was aware that Rice Miller was using his name, and this is what T said. He just said if he could make $1, let him make it, because it wasn't affecting his income in Chicago.
Right.
It was just spreading his fame if he ever
Exactly.
wanted to go into
Yeah.
Mississippi, you know,
Yeah.
he could have
He could
shown
be
up
there
as the
for a
real,
while.
the real
Yeah.
one, sounding just like his records.
Yeah, and I believe Big Joe Williams and Sonny Boy actually tried to copy a little bit of hit. I think they did a song called King Biscuit Stomp, and you know Rice was on
Yeah,
King Biscuit, so you know a lot of cross pollination there. You know,
Same with the lyrics.
yeah, there's a lot of floating lyrics and a lot of that. Yeah.
Dr. Evans, what is some of the earliest blues recordings that were done from this area?
Well, I mean, the artists from here didn't go up early, say, to Chicago and record. Eventually, they did after they started recording, or they went there initially to record. But I would say, as best I know, those recordings of Cannon's Jug Stompers in 1928 with there's just 3 of them, and 2 of them were from West Tennessee. Ashley Thompson from Ripley and Noah Lewis from Henning. And then Gus Cannon had played up in West Tennessee quite a bit in his earlier career with medicine shows, and I think he lived in Ashport for a number of years. So that was largely a West Tennessee sound. Maybe Cannon's banjo was a little odd in that sound, but then you get Hambone Willie Newbern doing a few songs in 1929, and a few months later, Sleepy John Estes with Yank Rachel record, along with a pianist. They record in Memphis, and there's a pianist, Jab Jones. I'm not sure where he was from, but actually I can look it up. He might have been from West Tennessee too. So those are the first ones. This is
And a lot of those people had to go to Memphis
Well, we
to
don't
record
have-
because
Right.
I mean that was where
We
the
don't have
recording
bad
was.
bands,
It wasn't
that's
like
a shame.
the Lomaxes were going around at that time and doing it in the field recordings. So a lot of what would be considered West Tennessee blues ended up in the Memphis sound. So and you know, and the Jug Stompers and all that, a lot of the string bands. I mean, you look at the, you know, Sonny Boy, the harmonica, and Yank with the mandolin. There's a lot of string band sound stuff with these bands. So,
not in here.
What Dr. Evans, what I find interesting is you talked about Hambone Willie Newbern and his rolling and tumbling blues, which is a melody that is reused to this day.
Well, that first melody first surfaced, as best I know, with Noah Lewis's recording of Viola Lee blues with Cannon's Jug Stompers, and a year before Newbern recorded it.
Right.
So,
And then
but Newbern's piece was kind of a hit, and it was with guitar. It featured very fine guitar playing, and the slide style too is one of the first hits with bottleneck slide guitar in the blues.
and I find it interesting in listening to Robert Johnson's recording of it. It's very similar, almost note for note at times.
Yeah, very close.
And then
So you wonder if he had seen or met Newbern or just heard it off the record, which a lot of people heard the record. It was a bit of a hit, you know, as country blues records went in those days.
and from what I can gather, what little bit we know about Hambone Willie Newbern comes to us from Sleepy John, correct?
Mm-hmm.
His recollections of it.
Yeah, I think they were kin in some way. I'm not
okay.
sure, but anyway, he knew him. Yeah. Newbern seems to have moved around a lot, town to town, in the Mid-South area.
And he kind of met with a violent end, I think, too.
Yeah, I think so.
I think he was
I think it was he killed in Memphis
beat
in
to
a,
death
in
somewhere.
a jail in Memphis.
Again, I can
Yeah.
look it up.
Now,
I will.
when we talk about Sleepy John Estes, we're also talking about Hammy Nixon and Yank Rochelle. Tell us a little bit about what makes them significant to the West Tennessee area. They often get credited as sidemen, but really they were their own artists in their own right.
Oh yeah. I never met Hammy Nixon, but Yank, I hired play at Mark Blues Festival, and he was in his early '80s then, and he was still just a wonderful mandolin player, and that is such an interesting sound when you play blues on mandolin, and as far as I know, there's only been a couple of other blues mandolin players. I mean, there's Howard Johnson and I forgot the other guy's name, from Johnny Young, I think.
Johnny Young.
And so
Charlie McCoy.
yeah, and McCoy. But like I said, to me, they are really country blues. I mean, I just feel like there was a lot of influence of the string bands and stuff that because the harmonica and the jug and all that was used in the jug bands. I mean, the harmonica was considered kind of a novelty instrument, and until Sonny Boy came along and made it a lead instrument. So I think the West Tennessee blues has been very influential anyway, as far as the songs and the other people that have recorded in the rock era and all that. I mean, you look at Carl Perkins doing Matchbox Blues, and that's just a reworking of Blind Lemon Jefferson's.
Right.
So, country blues is a foundation music for American music.
Well, they formed bands here. I guess the towns like Brownsville and Jackson were big enough or prosperous enough to support these little blues bands of 3, 4 pieces sometimes, or just duos like Hammy and Sleepy John. But they would then maybe have mandolin with Yank Rachel, as they did later on after the rediscovery. And Hammy could play jug and kazoo as well as harmonica, and so they have little jug bands. In fact, he recorded on jug in 1934 with Sun Bonds. They were a duo, I think before, or maybe at the same time when he was getting with Sleepy John.
And Sun Bonds played some with Sleepy John.
And he did also, yeah. So they all, and Yank Rachel was in town and off and on with them. He had a regular job on a dairy farm here.
So Sun Bonds had like what we consider some minor hits himself.
He certainly did. A Hard Pill to Swallow was a pretty good hit for him in 1941, and a number of blues artists up in Chicago and elsewhere recorded versions of it on into later years.
Which I find interesting, what you just said, but so we can associate Sun Bonds with Brownsville, Hambone Willie Newbern with Brownsville, Sleepy John Estes, Yank Rochelle, and Hammy Nixon were all at least pretty much this area.
Yeah, these are early recording artists, yeah.
Correct. Okay. Now, there's something you struck on earlier, the Chicago blues, Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, which is like the Chicago, we'd call it a benchmark, or what would you call it, a benchmark of Chicago blues was written with Jackson Abbey, right?
Hey, that was at his first recording session.
Right.
Chicago, they did Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, Sugar Mama, which was also one that Howlin' Wolf and some other folks did, and of course Muddy Waters did Good Morning Little Schoolgirl, and he did Jackson Blues, and he did one other, I can't remember, but he did 4 sides, 4 cuts that first time, and did well. And with Sonny Boy, he starts out country blues and with his stuff, but by the time his last recordings of Shake the Boogie and Metal Chick Swing, he's gone to a more urban style too. So he's a bridge to a lot of the country blues into a Chicago sound.
Well, he's unlike Mississippi and the Delta, where you had a massive migration of musicians up to Chicago. Here in West Tennessee, you had Sonny Boy Williamson, and the only other significant musician was, I think, Lee Brown, who's a pianist from around Ripley, and he had some hits in the 40s, but he just kind of fell out of the scene, and of course Sonny Boy was killed in 1948, so West Tennessee didn't really have any drawing cards up in Chicago. And Yank Rachel wound up in Indianapolis and obscurity, and the others stayed back down south. You know, Sleepy John and Hammy, or they died off or whatever. It just didn't happen in the post-war world, and the Delta musicians kind of get all the credit for a lot of that. But I guess the heyday was in the late 20s and 30s and 40s for this blues from here, and then some people took it out from this area, like Big Mayville, and that in the 50s and later. She was a great singer.
She's credited with what's her biggest song?
Her biggest song is Candy.
Candy,
Right.
yeah.
But she also did the original A Whole Lot of Shaking Going On. And that was actually produced by Quincy Jones. So, I mean,
No.
so there's a Michael Jackson connection.
Right. Yeah.
So, you know, but, you know,
Gavin Blues.
Gavin Blues,
She
My Country Man. And,
she had hits covering Beatles songs in the
Yeah.
60s.
yeah. She
Yeah,
did.
I
She
mean,
did Question Mark and
was-
Mysterians, 96 Tears.
Yeah, in the 96 Tears, yeah.
She originated
She was
that.
doing,
She did that song.
She
She
was-
did 96 Tears.
No,
Yeah,
she covered them.
She covered
was,
96
Yeah,
Tears.
towards the late 60s and 70s, she was sort of on harder times, so she was doing.
but those
a lot of-
were good
They were-
recordings. I mean,
she's
she
great.
did with rock and roll what Ray Charles had done with country music.
She's got one of the most powerful voices,
Yeah.
and I've heard. I mean, and she can go from raw to just smooth
Yeah,
as silk.
yeah.
And you could, if you get on YouTube, you can go. I think it's Jazz on a Summer's Day, which is Newport 58 or 59, I can't remember. But she played the Newport Jazz Festival, and they've got a couple of cuts with her on there, and powerful singer.
What going back to something Dr. Evans said is, is it safe to say, because I remember reading something about Hammy Nixon talking about as he grew older, his style of music fell out of favor. Could that be attributed to the reason that West Tennessee blues kind of?
Well, it, you mean it kind of as a harmonica player?
Well, just
or
the whole blues in general to the younger generations.
Well, yeah, I mean, it was considered country, you know,
Right.
by that time, say by the 60s, which it kind of was, you know, but
Yeah.
at one time it was modern, you know. All old music was new at some point. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, blues in general sort of faded. Anyway, you know, it was at a very low ebb when guys in England started hearing it, and basically just redid what we already had here and sold it back to us with guys with cute haircuts.
And it
Loud
was,
amps.
Yeah.
it was changing too, moving into soul music and
Yeah.
then funk, but those
Yeah.
always kept a lot of blues quality
You know, you
in
don't.
them, but people just didn't call it
Right.
blues all the
I
time.
mean, rhythm and R&B, rhythm and blues.
Yeah.
I mean, so, but you know, blues has always been the basis for everything. As far as I mean, country music also. I mean, you know, Carl Perkins was a sharecropper up in Lake County, and he was up there, and there was a lot of black influence in his music. Same way with Hank Williams, the T-Tot, you know, the guy that taught him some stuff. So, you know, blues is just a foundation music.
Correct. And in talking about its fading, the country blues fading, it had its resurgence, and I think that you kind of witnessed some of that.
Well, yeah, there was a revival in the 1960s especially, and that was Sleepy John Estes, along with Hammy Nixon, were some of the first to be rediscovered. I saw them in 1962 in Massachusetts, so they had just been rediscovered and starting to tour in a new kind of national circuit, and eventually went overseas several times. And so that, audience has grown from that point on, looking at blues up to that point, you might say. Blues music hasn't stylistically developed much since whatever styles you had in the 60s, but there have been a lot of new people, new songs, and good music created at that time.
One thing I find interesting with the resurgence is that Sleepy John Estes and some of the others that were rediscovered, the passion that people in Europe had for them, like that almost helped drive that desire to bring them some kind of note. What do you think?
Yeah, Europe and also Japan, especially with John and Hammy, they went over there several times, and Hammy was always talking about Japan and the Japanese people. Somewhere here in Brownsville, I've seen it. There is a plaque that was given by some Japanese organization to the city of Brownsville, and it shows, I think, Hammy leading Sleepy John. John was blind, although he wasn't blind all of his life, but Hammy leading him from a shack on one side of the plaque, and on the other, opposite side of the plaque is Mount Fuji. And so, from the kind of cabin that you see out back here to, Mount Fuji.
Yeah, Europeans have always
come a long way.
Yeah, Europeans have always been really into American music. I mean, not just blues.
They do, yeah.
Yeah, but rockabilly and old rock and roll. I mean, some of the most annotated stuff, box sets you can find are, Bear Family stuff. I think that's in Germany. I mean, and they've got meticulous notes on everything. And there's a record company in England, I think, called Stomp that actually has a lot of Jackson's rockabilly music that you have to buy through them, that was recorded here in Jackson. So,
An interesting story, maybe one of y'all told it or I heard of someone else, is when Sleepy John got off the airplane in Japan and they mobbed him like a superstar.
Hammy used to say that, yeah, that about 2,000 or 3,000 people came to the airport to meet them. I think it was their last tour.
Is it here? He went from like the little town in Brownsville where, just a local guy that people kind of knew a little bit about to,
yeah.
What was the reaction? They said that they mobbed him, and he's like, what was his, what did he say?
I don't know.
He said, they're here for you, John. And he said, well, I ain't done nothing to them people. I don't even know them. So it was like he didn't grasp his power in a sense,
Yeah.
You go from on the corner, or as some people here who have actual recollections firsthand of him, the man in the post or the man in the store playing the guitar to the few people he knew.
Well, there's great, of course, in Japan, in the culture, there's great respect for old people, which John was at that time. And then they have some blind musicians, too. They're almost like holy men. So John kind of fell into that image, you might say, in Japan. And I think that helped him become a kind of revered figure there.
I think it's really good, at least at the end, towards the end, he got some of that, a little bit of that recognition that he obviously deserved, that the power of his music.
He led a very kind of double existence, really, in great poverty here, and then could go certain places in the world and be a star. Treated like one.
I remember hearing an interview with Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin, and he was actually on King Biscuit, and the first artist he mentioned was Sleepy John Estes. It wasn't Muddy Waters, and it wasn't. I mean, he made a point to say Sleepy John Estes was a huge influence on him. I thought that was pretty telling.
Yeah, you know, they recorded. I think it was Brownsville Blues, or The Girl I Love's Got Long Curly Hair. You know, so yeah. Of course, Robert Plant came to Jackson looking for Sonny Boy Williamson too. So I mean, and he's big in the blues. He's big in the roots, obviously.
And so another thing, I know Dr. Evans had some things he wanted to play us and share with us. We've got a little bit of time. One thing I would like to ask before we do that, though, is in my researching, we've established Son Bonds, and then the more noted artists, Hamo Willie Nibbert, and then even Sleepy John, who we can consider probably the most well-known of the West Tennessee country blues men, and then Hammy and Yank Rochelle. Some more obscure blues men, namely Laddie Morrell and a man named Kerry Tate, who was from Humboldt, who had actual albums done in the 70s and 80s in Europe. Was it Italy for Kerry Tate, an Italian label?
Yeah.
And then Laddie Morrell, who to me, as someone who's listened to blues for a long time, one of the more powerful artists I've ever heard, period. And is totally unknown to the world. Unless you can get on YouTube and hear them.
Yeah, I never met him. Where did he live, over around Covington?
Laddie Morrell was like Selmer, McNairy County, that southern area.
Was he?
I think that's what's so frustrating and stymieing about him, is that you don't know.
And, I know he's in here.
But Kerry Tate was from Humboldt, Tennessee.
Yeah.
Because that's in Gibson County, and an Italian. I swapped emails with the guy who recorded him, and he went to Humboldt and did a field recording of Kerry Tate, and it's up on YouTube as well. And he's really smoking good. Just he and his guitar, and then Laddie Morrell is almost. We get to talking about things like the North Mississippi Hill Country Blues. He kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
This is Somerville.
Somerville, okay. So south of here, even further south.
Sure, at least he was born there. And
Right.
died in Nashville. Maybe in a hospital or something.
Right.
But I think he was living over towards Covington a while too, maybe in the 60s or 70s. My friend Axel Kussner from Germany met him, I think sometime in the late 70s. And said he was a very tough character, Laddie Morrell.
Bit of a rounder, wasn't he? From what
Yeah.
I can hear.
I mean, drinking, gambling, everything. Tough guy. Had a lot of scars on him from fights he'd been in.
The album I have just recently purchased was Live at the Bootlegger's House. So it was recorded at a bootlegger's house. It wasn't like they called it that. It was, you can hear them, people buying moonshine in it.
Yeah.
Which goes back to the culture surrounding, like they would get away from the cities and get out to where they could hide and do what they wanted to do. And the whole subculture built around not just the music, but the party too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's also a guy at a meeting, Arthur Adams. You heard of him? He's currently, I mean, he's not country blues, but he's more of a B.B. King kind of blues. He's from Madison County. So there's all kinds of folks out there, you know, that might have done one single, or like Christine Chapman, who was with Big Maybelle. She had a couple of hits on her own. So there's a lot of great music out there that you really got to go out and dig.
Right. The internet helps a lot.
It's a lot easier now than it was years ago. So,
and just to summarize before we listen to some examples, what do you think would separate musically West Tennessee? Obviously, with Sleepy John and the trio, you have the mandolin. What are some of the other things that you think make it significantly a little bit different?
Well, as I say, the role of the harmonica, and especially the harmonica with other instruments, with guitar particularly, and in a kind of a band setting, harmonica, and you can hear this in Noah Lewis's recordings. It moves from being a kind of a solo plaything for specialty pieces into being a blues instrument in a band, and that, and I think the songwriting and a lot of great songs, and many of them about real events that the singer experienced or witnessed, about people, places, this kind of localism and personalized character of the songs. But many other good songs that I suppose anybody could have sung. Sonny Boy Williamson, Sleepy John, Son Bonds, Yank Rachel, a great songwriter. They're all really strong songwriters. And then there are just certain tunes like Rolling and Tumbling, melodies and rhythmic patterns, forms or structures of the blues that really have a West Tennessee stamp to them. I brought some examples, but I don't know if we can get to all of them.
We can get to them.
Well, there's probably too many.
We can get to what we can try. And also, you talking about lyrically, like Sleepy John Estes, he name checks a lot of people in his songs. He doesn't just say the guy name. He Lawyer Clark. He names them by name, and Sonny's mentioned that there are other people he calls out by name. Makes a point to mention them.
White and black, rich and poor. I mean,
All right.
There's Lawyer Clark. There's poor Vassar Williams that had a sort of jack-like auto repair shop on the side of the road. You know, is subject of one of his songs. You know, just various girlfriends of his.
And in places like I left Ripley. I was feeling kind of bad, and he name checks actual places and geography.
Yeah.
I think too it's interesting that to kind of give you a comment on their mindset was they did what label they recorded Memphis was it
Victor first.
They recorded the Victor label and they got paid and they went to Helena, Arkansas and blew all their money in like a week or two. Came on broke. You know, it was the mentality then. It was like they had that money and it burned a hole in their pocket.
Yeah, that's why Sonny Boy was in Chicago. I mean, he had all kinds of. He was making good money, and he would go out to clubs. And one guy I read said that he would like miss his pocket and money just go everywhere. You know, so it's really no big surprise that he ended up dead.
Right.
But you know, the songwriting in that, I mean, is very interesting with the West Tennessee blues. Like he said, the whole stories. You can go into even Sonny Boy's stuff, and you can glean little bits and pieces of his life. He mentions in one song, "You Can Lead Me," he mentions his brother T.W., and he mentions, "I was married before this," and you go back and you check, and he was married before this and that. So, yeah, I think
it might have been the devil he was dealing with.
Yeah, I think he said one of the songs there, you know.
He dealing with the devil, and it wasn't the devil; it was a woman.
Yeah, there are others.
I thought it's just from a visual too. These men, now they didn't just they put you there visually. To me, that's what kind of always made it for me. Was that he talked about her eyes changing colors, like the person got so mad at him. It's like wow, what a visual image. You know, they were very, very obviously very intelligent.
And you don't see a whole lot of the floating verse in every song. You know, each song seems to pretty much stand on its own.
Yeah, in fact, there were others too. Little Buddy Doyle was from, I think, Somerville. He made a few recordings, but very good songs. Was it Down to Skin and Bones, and a lot of them kind of really sad, deep themes. He was a midget and played a guitar and was quite well known in Memphis for a while. And it was Joe Hill Lewis, the guitarist. He was from somewhere around like Moscow or Tennessee, out that way. And, very fine songwriter as well as player, on into the 50s in Memphis. But he was from West Tennessee. So there were just quite a few, but then after that, blues, I don't know too many from here in the modern era, say Big Maybelle.